Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Is the sentiment towards the tech sector changing? How are chip shortages impacting the tech industry? The company's growth drivers, challenges, new alliances, contracts, and what investors should keep an eye on near term are the topics that our guest will deep dive into today. He's the president, CEO, and owner of Gatekeeper Systems. Doug Dyment is joining us today. But before we bring him on, do me one quick favor and just go ahead and smash that subscribe button, please. Hey, Doug, welcome to The Dive.
Thank you.
So let's start off with this. Tech companies were the darlings of the pandemic. Amid rising interest rates and rampant inflation, do you think that the sentiment towards the tech sector is changing at all?
I think you're going to start to see investors look for more value plays. Given the market correction as of late. We've really been in a cycle here in the last 12 months where it's almost feels like a slow bleeder, if you will. The tech sector has, NASDAQ is down 25%, I believe, and micro caps such as Gatekeeper have really been hit hard. It's one of the reasons that I've always been a believer to build our company based on solid fundamentals, and I'm a believer, like every cycle comes and goes. I'm a believer that investors will look for companies that in the microcap space that are more than just promotional, I suppose, or don't necessarily have customers or sales. Gatekeeper isn't that. If you look at Gatekeeper, we're a company that that's built on solid fundamentals. So I think you're going to start to see investors with the enormous amount of money that was plowed into the tech sector, 18 months ago, there's been a significant amount coming out of it. There's been that correction, but we're expecting to see, money come back in. And I'm a big believer that investors are going to be looking for value plays, right? So it's just that.
Now, some are saying that the chip shortage could last until 2024. If this is true, what impact do you think that this would have on the tech industry?
Well, that chip sector, the chip shortage has had an impact across the entire tech sector. I mean, you can see it. You can see it everywhere, right? In the automobile industry, these dealers are struggling with inventory. In the case of our industry, we made some decisions to take care of that problem by a commitment of a significant amount of inventory, and certainly we try to project what some of these hurdles are going to be and react accordingly, and we protected our company with a significant commitment to inventory. So that's been a rock solid decision, positive results for us. But overall, that it continues to be, a challenge, and we'll get through it, right? But at the moment, it's causing some significant issues, especially when you've got the feds, allocating a significant amount of, funding, more funding than I've ever seen in my business career, and directly, when you look at our markets, there's a lot of funding coming into the transit market, into the K-12 market. And, so the chip shortage, when you've got funds coming in, it's, that's even more challenging, because the orders can you can build a back order, but can you deliver? That's the question, right? So that chip shortage is definitely a problem. And like I say, we'll get through it. It's got its challenges for sure.
So for our guests new to your story, what is the high-level elevator pitch for Gatekeeper Systems?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, Gatekeeper is we protect people in transit, and we have a platform strategy where we record data out at the edge, as I call it, right? And the edge being on these vehicles, K to 12 school buses and transit buses and trains. Evidence is a key piece of data that we collect. And video has become video actually used to be a luxury years ago, right? But it's luxury anymore. These customers that we deal with, they need video as a core piece of data, to not only to make decisions on the operations side, but just as important to to solve specific problems on the using that video as evidence. East Pennsylvania Transit Authority, which is one of our largest customers, a few years ago they were spending $50 million a year in false liability claims. And Gatekeeper has evolved into their technology provider, and they've reduced the amount of their fraudulent claims down to 20 million. So video is really important to them. On the K to 12 side of things, we record video for a number of different reasons inside the bus, right? To protect kids for wrongdoing that's going on inside the bus, and then we're also doing the same outside the bus, where you've got 360-degree systems that feed back to the driver, so the driver can make intelligent decisions that he or she wouldn't normally be able to make because of these blind spots. And then you've got the stop arm camera business as well, where we're recording license plates of vehicles passing stop arms. We're able to use our cloud-based application to take the license plate and pump it up into the cloud, match the license plate with the vehicle owner, issue a so in that case, there's a lot of wonderful things that are happening with our technology to create a safer environment, not only on the inside of the bus, but also the outside of the bus. So in all those situations, video is a key piece of data that is used for a number of reasons.
Absolutely. Okay, so what drivers do you think will help market growth for a platform as a service like Gatekeeper?
Well, the drivers are a number of things, right? So public awareness is certainly one of them. Like for instance, I'll talk about the drivers in this way, specific to a couple of our niches, right? So in the K to 12 side of things, when kids are unfortunately killed or injured when they're getting on and off buses because of these stop arm violations, that is that becomes public knowledge quite quickly, right? So in order for us to use our technology in an effective way, there has to be legislation that's passed at the state level that allows authorities to use video from a school bus video system as evidence to issue a citation. So otherwise you've got to have law enforcement that's going to be following these buses around and looking for these violations to happen. With 550,000 yellow school buses in North America and the number of stops that each bus has to make, it's an impossible situation to police. So Gatekeeper's technology, we use some AI, to some artificial intelligence to make the system more intelligent out at the edge, and really automate that whole process. So one of the drivers is passing state law, right, which drives public awareness, of course. And there's approximately 16 million of these incidents that happen every year in the United States. So that's one thing. Some of the drivers in some cases in school districts, you'll have sexual assaults that are going on in school buses. There's bullying. Bullying is a big issue, in the K-12 side of things. So we want to make sure that we're recording that data accurately so that we can deliver it to the transportation managers and they can deal with those problems. They've got the evidence to deal with it. So those are some of the drivers. Another driver on the financial side is the amount of money that the feds are are allocating to the K-12 side. I'm going to get to the transit business here in a sec, but those are important drivers that can potentially drive more sales, for our business, our industry. And then there's another one, right, which is the change in with diesel buses and gas buses. President Biden has announced a pretty aggressive plan to replace every school bus, approximately 500,000 of them over the next 10 years with electric. So that is a fresh palette of 500,000 vehicles. And, there's a number of drivers there. And of course, another one, we're starting to see the revenue per bus go up because the number of cameras that are required inside the bus is growing because of high back seats and requirements to be able to see down inside those seats. And then as I mentioned, the stop arm camera business, which is a unique system on the outside of the bus. And then you've got the requirement to be able to see blind spots to create a safer environment, which ties in our 60 system. All of those new systems start to increase the revenue per bus, right? So there's a number of things. There's also the, we're adding passenger counting, we're, student counting, we're tracking students. We're giving parents an application to allow them to know where the bus is and when it's going to, arrive at the stop so that they can manage their
cool.
efficiently. And all of those, those products, which are part of our platform as a service, those are all drivers to drive our industry. So that's on the K-12 side. And then on the transit side, I've already mentioned false liability claims. Certainly the same issues are going on with, refresh of vehicles. Integration on that side of things with passenger counting and video, live transmission, being able to, and by the way, this is the same in the K-12 market, being able to see inside a bus or a train as far as what has happened. So what is happening real time so that you can deploy the forces or appropriate response. Those are some of the issues as well. The NTSB, another one, they are, they're driving, requirements for crash-worthy type devices connected to the video systems. We're seeing that in Pennsylvania Transit Authority, where if there's ever a crash, a portion of the video is protected inside of a crash-worthy type storage device, similar to what you'd see on the black box in airplanes, right? So those are some of the drivers, that are going on in the transit business.
What about the risks? What kind of risks are you anticipating for public cloud infrastructure and as a platform provider?
Well, it all depends. One of the risks is getting data back across the networks. So the size of the pipe, is important. We're starting to see 5G, come on board, in these various cities. So that's a good thing. There's the technical risk, and then you've got, kind of economical risk, right? So we feel like on the technical side, we've got a really good, handle on, being able to move data across these wireless networks in a mobile environment. It's a lot easier to do it, in a fixed site because you've got hardwired systems. But in the mobile side, the technical side, it definitely gets a little bit more challenging. And Gatekeeper that's where our focus is, right? So we've got an engineering team that is completely focused, 100% of their time, on developing solutions to deal with those problems. And quite frankly, when you look at the size of an account like Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority, they could have chose any company they wanted to, but there was a reason that they chose Gatekeeper. right? And that our ability to solve those technical problems is only one of the reasons. On the economic side of things, some of these government agencies, they're always challenged with with operation funds and funding to put the technology in place to to basically make their environment a better environment for their riders. So that's why this period of time in the history of our business is quite unique, because of the amount of federal funds that are coming out to support these technology platforms, right? For transit as one example. I forgot to mention, but there's another driver here which is quite interesting, and it's called, we announced a new system called automated lane enforcement. And really, that is that can be a risk, when you look at risks as it relates to operational risks for transit. They've got to be able to move buses from one point to another unencumbered, right? So as we start to pull out of COVID environment, there's more vehicles in the city, right? So those transit lanes will get congested. And for automated lane enforcement, what we do is we've got that cloud-based application that allows us to take license plates from our video enforcement system that gets installed on transit buses, and we can, if there's a vehicle in the lane, we can capture that license plate. By the way, in the lane illegally, we can capture the license plate and we can pump it up into the cloud and issue a citation. So that creates two things, right, for transit agencies. One, it allows them to increase revenue, right? And then number two, it improves the operations, allowing their transit buses to get from point A to point B unencumbered, which makes for happy riders, right? So those are some of the things that I see as pretty important for what we're doing here at Gatekeeper.
Okay, so Doug, last month you announced the expansion of your alliance with Canyon State. Could you walk us through the alliance, and what does this mean for the company?
Yeah, so Gatekeeper has, first of all, Gatekeeper's got a lot of alliances with dealers across the country. We've increased our our presence in Arizona, largely due to the fact that right where Canyon State is and in Phoenix and Tucson. Those are, certainly Phoenix is one of the fastest growing areas in the United States, right? So Gatekeeper is leveraging the relationships that our alliance partners like Canyon States has. We're excited about that relationship. And we see ourselves, growing the business in that particular area as that hub starts to grow. So there, like I say, there's a number of alliances that we have, across the country. We typically do business in 50 states and, in all the provinces in Canada. Our focus is on North America, and those alliance, dealerships are important to us for sure.
Now, we saw that you have $3 million cash on your balance sheet. How do you intend to utilize your cash position?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, we $3 million in cash is we have a solid balance sheet. We have approximately $8 million in working capital, so we've got a healthy amount of inventory to deal with the not only the backlog but also the large sales funnel that we've got. And the $3 million in working cap, or $3 million in cash that we've got, that's typically used for a little bit for growth capital as well as our standard operations. It's cycling, all the time, right? So you'll probably see that cash actually grow as we execute, this year, right? So we've got lines of credit in place. We're in the process of and I hope to have an announcement here shortly, but we're in the process of increasing our facility at our bank, and that's all, that's a non-dilutive LC, a line of credit, and we've got great relationships with some of our OEMs, that help to support, with facilities there as well, and the goal here is to increase our cash and not dilute the company, right? So we have been doing that over the last many quarters, and we've grown it. I think the last financing we did was in 2017, where we raised approximately 4.2 million, but we've self-funded ourselves for since then, right? So we plan to continue to do that.
Okay. So you mentioned that you've received a purchase contract from the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority. Could you give us some more color on this?
Yeah, so Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority is one of the largest transit agencies, in the country, right? So they've been a customer of ours for several years now, and we evolved from being a service provider, of servicing their existing equipment, which is older and is failing in many cases. And if you remember earlier in this talk, I mentioned how much money they were spending on false liability claims, and it was upwards of about 50 million. So once they were able to see our ability to service effectively, they invited us to a POC. We went head to head with all the top competitors, and they chose Gatekeeper as their technology provider. And it's evolved from there, to a number of contracts over the years. I think we're up to now pretty close to $30 million in revenue, out of that account. And we see them as a beachhead account for us. We are, in Philadelphia, we are more of a community partner. We've got, boots on the streets. Our Gatekeeper USA is located just outside of Philadelphia and in Bristol, and we service all of our US, product accounts out of Bristol. And our plan is to really leverage, Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority into other major accounts, right? So that's the plan, and certainly that contract that we just recently announced, is it's an example of the great service that all of our from our engineering team to our finance and administration team to the production side and our service people have taken care of. Really, they've done a job of taking care of that account, and it's leveraging it into more and more business for us. So we're excited about that.
Okay, so one more thing before we let you go here, Doug. What are the things that investors should be looking out for with Gatekeeper Systems over the near term?
Well, it'd be nice to see if we get a market correction going in the other way, right? That would be nice, because Gatekeeper is in a position, to be one of those companies that gets more fairly valued than we currently have. So that's and on the growth of the business, we're investing, in two key marketplaces. Even though our platform, platform as a service could be allocated to a number of markets, we're staying laser focused on the transportation side, right? So we're focused on, K-12, and we're focused on, transit. And, we've got a healthy sales funnel. We've got over 8 million in working capital, and like you mentioned, 3 million in cash. And, so really we're projecting, a solid, finish to this year. We're expecting a significant, fourth quarter, right? I know we're in the third quarter, and there's, the back order is growing. That $5 million deal is a good example of that. We've invested in our inventory, much more so than we have in previous years, only because of the pandemic and the chip shortage. So we've taken care of that risk for the most part. And now it's time to really execute. So I would encourage investors just to continue to follow us, and look for annual growth. There's things that are really outside of the company's control, like the timing of when some of these projects land. But our sales funnel, like I say, our sales funnel is growing, and looking at collecting data out at the edge. This is something for new investors. Our existing investors know our strategy, and it's certainly, I encourage investors to read our MD&A, have a look at our website. We've just refreshed the website. There's an investor presentation there that clearly lays out our strategy. But our overall goal here is to collect data out at the edge and then leverage that data, with cloud-based software applications to really monetize the data in the future. So we're already starting to increase our business. We're starting to, on the recurring revenue side, and that's really the play here. Like Gatekeeper is really, in my view, we are an emerging data play, right? So that's really where we want to be in the future here. We want to, but in order to get there, you have to have systems in order to collect the data out the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
We got 40,000 mobile data collectors out there that are all wirelessly connected, that are collecting data every day. Video is just part of it. There's also vehicle sensors and whatnot, so that's going to be, the future of Gatekeeper is really going to be, monetizing that data into more recurring revenue type contracts. And that's something that I'm excited about. And I'm hopeful that when investors analyze, Gatekeeper and match us up against, other potential investors or investments in their portfolio, that they keep that in mind, because that's an important piece to the overall growth story here at Gatekeeper.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Doug, and sharing your story with us. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. We'll be back again tomorrow with the latest in small cap news coverage. So be sure to stay tuned by hitting that notification bell and subscribing below before you leave us.